So hello again, everyone, for our last session. It, as always, went very fast, so we are almost already at the end. I'm very glad to have Venerable Amy with us again.
Yes, it's gone very, very quickly.
Yes.
And just checking, how's everyone doing? Everybody good? Okay. Okay, wonderful. We're starting to talk now about the qualities of the heart that come from the heart, starting with forgiveness. I also find, as I mentioned before, I like to think of acceptance and forgiveness often together. When I'm more willing to accept things about myself, I can accept those in others. When I'm more willing to forgive myself, easier to forgive others. And in that big space of acceptance of someone, you're going to accept your flaws, that you make mistakes. You're going to accept others, that they make mistakes. And so in humor, I was mentioning the board meetings we've been having, this person that had mentioned to me, this comment you said was rude, which it really wasn't. It didn't come from that place at all. Could we just start the meeting on time? Saying that in an email. So later, he's a therapist, and he himself said he has a history of criticizing people. So I wrote him back in an email when he said that, and he was the only one that felt that way. And then at the very end, was I mentioning that? Yeah, I think I mentioned this already. Can you? Yeah, I already told that story. So when he said to me, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. And then I just made a joke and said, oh, I'm shocked to hear that, So it's nice to just lighten things up, and it kind of, the whole issue just kind of went away. Okay, so let's look at forgiveness. I have this lovely little video that I have lined up to share.
Forgiveness does not mean forget. You should keep memory about the other negative thing. But because of that, there is possibility to develop anger, hatred, that control. That's the meaning of forgiveness. Almost natural response is when I'm hit, I hit back. When you have been refined, you put yourself in the shoes of the other. It is totally wrong. The practice of tolerance and practice of forgiveness is signs of weakness. Totally wrong. 100% wrong. Or 1000% wrong. Isn't it? Yeah, well, this is forgiveness. It's a sign of strength. Isn't it? Absolutely. Yes, I was just going to say, those who say forgiving is a sign of weakness haven't tried it. Share the joy. Are you in?
If you're trying to lose belly fat, stop doing cardio. This sounds kind of backwards, right? Well, believe me, it's actually true.
Okay, how do I get out of this? So a great piece on, especially, I love when Archbishop Desmond Tutu says about when you're refined, he uses this word, when you're refined, think about evolving your mind more. That contributes via these 8 pillars of, and our Buddhist practice, our spiritual practice. But I love how he uses this word refine. When you become a refined person, High realizations would lead to refinement, is part of the refinement process. And it's beautiful with him talking about the path to bodhicitta, almost like equalizing, exchanging self with others, when he says, when you're refined, you put yourself in someone else's shoes. So we all have that term, that phrase in our languages, in our cultures, put yourself in someone else's shoes. I like to think sometimes of, you're looking out through somebody else's eyes. What are they reflecting? What is it like for them? Like that. So that is also the path to refinement. And that's part of the method of bodhicitta, like that. So hugely helpful. So think about the strength to forgive, where people think it then means I'm letting go the issue. And His Holiness says, no, remember, you can remember it, but you're not holding on and obsessing about it, where the anger drives you crazy, and makes you ill. So let's talk about more forgiveness. This is hard for some people, and especially people that have been severely abused over time, or by a close relative or someone and the person may still be in their life. How do you forgive? How do you work with that? Archbishop Desmond Tutu wrote a book with his daughter called The Book of Forgiving. I highly recommend it. It's got exercises in there, and they talk about a fourfold forgiveness process, And it starts with, number one, telling your story. So you were abused, harmed in a terrible way, or something happened to you. Tell your story, and you need to tell your story, if you can, to the abuser, if they're willing to sit there with you, but maybe have safe people with you to bear witness. If the abuser has passed away, they're no longer around you or near you, tell your story to someone. I've actually did this process with somebody that was gone, that I put them in front of me, across from me, and did the practice like a meditation over and over and over. And I said what I needed to say, sometimes repeating the same, so the second step is, after you tell your story, talk about how you feel about how it's affected you. And then you have a path of forgiving, letting it go, you're releasing yourself when you forgive. You're releasing yourself from the bondage. If you never forgive your abuser, they continue to hold you hostage even after they've died. That story is rooted in your heart. They did this to me, it happened to me. So the forgiving is releasing. Like, people make mistakes, and they make horrible mistakes. They make horrible mistakes based on fundamental ignorance. If you're a practicing Buddhist, you're going to try to take responsibility for your mind, acknowledging this is coming from ignorance, from confusion. Confusion, then underestimating reality, turns into hatred and anger. I'm not seeing clearly, and I'm seeing less than what is there. Terrible qualities causes hatred and anger. When I over embellish or over exaggerate the positive qualities, it leads to desire and attachment. Those three poisons again: ignorance, anger, hatred, and desire and attachment. Okay. Then there's additional root delusions and other negative mind states. Buddhists are taking responsibility for their mind, participating in their karma. So again, when you've been abused, another thing that helps with forgiveness as a Buddhist is to understand the law of cause and effect, karma. Buddhism says the cause is rooted in my consciousness, in my mind. What that means is I take responsibility for it. I'm not blaming myself or the past lives I've had that abuse people, okay? But here I am with the abuse right now. Well, again, ask yourself, what can I do about it? With compassionate wisdom. I can realize that the cause must have been created from an activity of my body, speech, and mind in the past. That's all. Must have been a horrible thing that was created, but it happened. It's done. It's over. Somebody was really confused. Now I'm reaping the condition is arising, the result is coming. And it's been really unfortunate, you might say. Okay, but Buddhists, again, in a deeper level with Lojong, a higher level, mind training teachings, these are a little bit stronger and more radical. I might then realize I'm purifying by suffering through the abuse. I am purifying the past activities that got me here. Okay? So it doesn't mean you're a masochist and you choose suffering. Okay? Nobody wants to choose suffering, but suffering's going to come up in samsara. And when it comes up, sometimes you get a grave illness, get a lighter illness, you have just misfortune. It's type of purification Buddhists would see. So I'm cleaning something out now. I'm not going to allow it to perpetuate as much as I can. It doesn't mean you suffer under the abuse for years, because this is good purification. It's a terrible thing for the abuser as well, if you want to consider them. But whatever happened, I purified, and now I'm choosing to forgive this person. Third step, forgiving the person. You know, some people with abuse, a lot of people that abuse have been abused themselves as children. They don't know any better in some ways. They know intellectually this is a bad thing to do, but sometimes it's out of control. Very, very bad habit that they're familiar with from their upbringing, from their own activities like that. So something's gone very sadly wrong. People are human. They make terrible mistakes. Right? I don't want to hold myself hostage anymore under their power. With the forgiveness, you release yourself from their hold. Okay? The fourth step is you can choose to renew the relationship, meaning you continue a relationship with the person, but it has to be in a non-abusive way. It has to be in a healthy way. So you're setting boundaries. You're communicating clearly to them, perhaps with witnesses, people bearing witness to you, that it's fine. You're able to live in the house. I'm okay with you living here. You can't drink anymore. You're an alcoholic. If I find one bottle of beer in the house that you brought in, I will ask you to leave. It's not that I don't like you, but these are the ground rules. This is it. You're an alcoholic. If I find at all that you're outside drinking, you're doing everything, you come home drunk, there's no questions. You'll be asked to leave right away. So you just set the boundaries, and then you have to keep to the boundaries if that's a situation of someone like that. You know, or with an abuser, maybe there's emotional abuse, verbal abuse, you know, and you say to the person, here's the ground. We'll say it very kindly, compassionately. I had to do it with someone in my life with verbal abuse. I'm happy to be here with you. I love you. I'm whatever. However, when you start speaking like that, I'm not going to be around for that. I'm sorry. And they changed a bit. They changed. I held them to it to a degree, but again, a little flexibility, knowing the habit was really strong in them. So if it was a little bit, but if it continued to go on and on, I either reminded them or was not going to be around. So you have to kind of keep up with that. Here's the second thing in part 4. You can choose not to continue the relationship, letting the relationship go. You realize the person is so unhealthy. They're not able to stop the negative behavior. You don't feel strong enough to kind of set limits and things. You may choose, I'm not able to have you in my life right now. I'm not able to. You can either say it to them or not. You can just choose not to phone, not to visit, not to take their phone calls. You know, sometimes I find it's easier to just express or even write them a letter. I'm not able to do this right now. I hope things will change in the future. No problem. No problem with that. We try our best. So that's something you can read more about in the Book of Forgiving, and it's probably been translated, I would imagine, into French. By letting go of past hurts, we can heal not only ourselves, but our families, our communities, the world. I mean, look what they did in the Republic of South Africa. It was quite significant. And their whole passage forward, although it has not been perfect, South Africa is not perfect these days, right? There's still a lot of poverty, but they're from Nelson Mandela, from his view of going forward, was instead of getting back, like Archbishop Desmond Tutu says, well, naturally when you're hit, you want to hit back. And that's what kids do often. They don't know, small children haven't developed those values yet. So the white majority at the time in South Africa, which was really a minority of people, but they were ruling, were terrified that they'd be ripped to pieces if they stopped the regime. Fortunately, because of the Leclerc, I think his name was, the president at the time, the white president, with Nelson Mandela, decided enough, let's make a change. And with Nelson Mandela talking about setting up the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, some of you are familiar with that, where they decided that through this process of forgiveness, and it was all run officially, that you could tell your story of what happened to you to the person that abused you and tortured you. People were horribly tortured and killed. So they allowed them to tell the person, and the people accepted it. The white people also accepted it, of here's how we're going to do it. You tell the story over and over of the atrocities, the people you lost, the people that were killed, how it affected your life. It was a very powerful, very dark period, in a sense, very tragic period. But instead of the vengeance and with a lot of people release their anger in that way, who lost their families. A lot of the abusers asked for forgiveness and were granted forgiveness by these families and these people that talk about a big space of heart and mind. It's huge. So forgiveness is a gift we offer to another. Okay. Sometimes it can be a gift that has strings attached. The strings we attach to the gift of forgiveness become the chains that bind us to the person who harmed us. And we continue to be the person's victim. So you want to let go of the strings. You want to let go of the other story. If you've told your story, now here's the surprising thing. If you've gone through a fourfold forgiveness process, or whatever your process is, maybe you've done it with a therapist, done it with an intervention with your family, perhaps. It's all kinds of things people do in the face of big abuse. So you've done it, you feel good, you've talked, you've told your story. Don't be surprised if you wake up the next morning and you have to forgive again. It's a process depending on the level of the abuse. It is hard to let it go. So you just keep trying to show up with an open heart, as opposed, granted with some vulnerability and protection. No problem. So unconditional forgiveness, though, not the ones with strings attached, unconditional forgiveness is forgiveness as a grace, a free gift, freely given. And in this model, forgiveness frees the person who inflicted the harm from the weight of the victim's whim, what the victim might demand in forgiveness. This is what they were afraid in South Africa, is eventually they're going to imprison all the white people and they're going to torture us, right? But it freed everybody from that. That wasn't going to happen. That was not the plan. And it didn't happen like that, okay? And it also frees from the victims, the threat of vengeance. So it frees everybody from that. And the victim doesn't really want to go there anyway, because it just creates more suffering. But it truly forgives the one, frees the one who forgives. The one who offers forgiveness as a grace is immediately untethered from the yoke that bound him, her, they to the person who caused the harm. When you forgive, you are free to move on in life. You're free to grow. You're free to no longer be a victim. So your future is unchained to that negative past story. But be conscious. Can you be conscious? Because I do know people who are victims. They have a victim personality in a sense. So whatever happened to them, whatever tragic thing happened to them in the past, they're continually rewriting the story, bringing up the story again. The story may have changed over time. It might have gotten worse over time from what actually happened. They obsess about it. They're consumed about it. Everything reminds them about it. they never get to heal fully. And they're never fully a whole person. It's always this kind of thing that happened to me. And they always end up being victims in everything that goes on, whether it's a workplace situation. Again, everybody's doing it to me. I do know people like that. I'm sure you do. But, they come in to sabotage something, some success they're having with a project, some successful life decision, and they find a way of sabotaging it because the story is still holding them. They've got to be a hostage. They've got to be a victim. Right? And they find a way of messing it up for themselves and then try to blame somebody else. So you don't want to be there. You try your best. And as His Holiness mentioned, the invitation to forgive is not an invitation to forget. Okay, so you can remember what happened. You're cautious in the future. If you live in the Republic of South Africa, for instance, they have to be very cautious about their politics, about, the racism and what white people are putting on people, just to see that it doesn't happen again. Okay, I know that, and I don't know if I'm from a Jewish background, so raised with the overarching thing of the Holocaust, which was, way before I was born. But there's all these associations that have grown up in Holocaust museums, as you know, right, that have come up to remind people that this happened so that it never happens again, was the whole thing, to remember so it never happens again. So you don't forget what happened, but you're cautious. Now, granted, we know all over the planet there's anti-Semitism. I've been victims of it myself when I was in school, going through school, and because early in the year are these very big holidays in Judaism, early in the school year. So right away, people would know that I'm Jewish. And so some kids were very, maybe not as evolved, some racism from their families. So there were things, so you want to just, I don't want to forget that. And yet I don't harbor any negative things about these people, but to try to remember, to make sure that racism and anti-Semitism and sexism and all of these isms that harm people, that keep people victims, that keep them powerless. And just to be cautious that you speak up for the voiceless at times. Are we hearing the voiceless? Am I being able, as I mentioned to you yesterday, who do you see who's really in the light and who's in the shadow? Who are people you don't notice much? You don't see them. Right? That they clean your house or they clean the hospitals, and we just choose not to kind of focus, the homeless and things like that. You have a number of people in Paris like that. I remember near the center taking a walk, and I'm sure some of you have done this, right? And France was quite spacious, or well, Germany may be more spacious, but of all the immigrants from Syria that you let in, you remember that, they were sleeping all over the streets in Paris, one of my visits. So I thought it's fantastic that they've let these immigrants in who were going to die, some of them probably. And then there were people, you had organizations in France that went around finding them on the street, it was cold, and asking them what they needed and bringing blankets or getting food or figuring out where they could live. And just near the center, I took a walk, I remember, north, and there was a refugee center. And so there were all these people like sleeping, waiting in line, sleeping in the street like that. So again, it's uncomfortable for us. So you walk by and you don't want to see them, but they're human beings like us that want to have a house. They just want to have a room, a safe room to live in with their families. But it's hard sometimes to look at that. So we try our best to face up to what's happening with reality, touching reality, as Lama Yeshe would say. Okay, forgiveness isn't an invitation to also say that an injury isn't a problem. Like, you don't want to bury it and say, no, everything's fine. Somebody abused you, it's fine. Happens a lot for women in the case of rape and things like that, sexual harassment. You don't want to make a problem. You're seen as a problem. You feel like you're seen as a problem if you speak up. Okay, so you don't want to minimize what it is, but you don't want to make it bigger where vengeance on someone. It's not a request as well to cover over something that's going on in your relationship when it's not okay to say it's okay. A lot of people do that in relationships. It's not okay to be injured. It's not okay to be abused or to be violated or to be betrayed. So you want to understand the clear boundaries of what is right, what is wrong. Most of us know, but sometimes we settle. We settle. I've had friends living with an alcoholic who's drinking. And the reason is they came from an alcoholic family. They themselves don't drink, but their father did. Father got really abusive when he drank, okay? Now they partner with somebody who's really abusive when they drink. It's a point of reference. It's familiar to them, familiar. So they make excuses for the partner. He only drinks a little. You know, he didn't hit me this month, right? This month was okay. That's not okay. So you need to get help. Try to find some people that can help you, whether it's first friends and family, professional people. Okay. So unforgiveness interferes with your joy. Not forgiving robs you of your ability to enjoy and appreciate life because you're constantly trapped in the past. You're filled with anger, bitterness, a wish to have vengeance. Okay. Forgiveness, including self-forgiveness, allows us to move beyond the past and appreciate the present. Very much so. Any questions about forgiveness? Anything this might bring up for people? Forgiveness is not approving. No, you're not approving. You're accepting. You're again, that's the remembering. Oh, she had to leave. Okay. Okay, everybody's okay. Great.
Maybe I have a question. It's the limit of the acceptance when you are abused. I mean, on little way or big ways. For me, it's not. For me, abuse is not acceptable. So that's what I do not clearly understand about your point of view.
Okay. So let's take one of the worst things. For me, this is one of the worst things: abusing a child, sexually abusing a child.
Mm.
It's very hard for me to, we say in English, we have a term, to get my mind around it, to understand it. I don't like people abusing anyone, but with children, they just seem so innocent and like that. So here's your choices. And this is from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective. Okay. I can hate that person. I can try to get them back, especially if it's your child that was abused. You call the police, you have your court case, whatever you're doing. Okay. Notice your heart feelings in the process. So this person more than likely was abused themselves as a child. A lot of child abuse people have been, right? Or there's some sort of illness that they have, a very severe illness that causes them to do that. Some people are out of control. They don't want to do it. They have no control. And so if you're healthy and like us, mostly balanced, we find it absurd that they have no control over that. We say they should know better. But think about ignorance. You know, if Vladimir Putin can invade an entire country due to his whim and his power and his greed and his distorted consciousness, that's a lot of people dying, as opposed to one child being abused, even though that's horrible. But I'm just saying, this is where our confusion can get so out of balance, but it's just due to the ignorance, okay, which we all have. And fortunately for us, we have enough good karma that puts us into a Dharma class with it. There's many people that are not even interested in a spiritual path. For them, it's all about, well, when I get enough money, I'll be happy. When I get the bigger house, I'll be happy. When I get the new car, I'll be happy. And then they get the new car, the big house, all the money, still not happy. So that's an average level of ignorance where most of the planet goes around like that. Just accepting the negativities that come in life and trying, but realizing that a lot of their happiness, their joy is all designed on external things that they have really no control over, not looking inside. So I would say that with the child abuser, it's not that I think it's okay what they're doing. I think it's horrible. But if I choose to not accept them and their illness and things like that, it's a harder place for my heart. So realizing this person has made a tremendous mistake due to ignorance, they need serious help. They should actually, yes, they should be arrested and taken off the streets until, if there's a chance of them being rehabilitated, counseled. Sometimes they're medicated. Sometimes there's physiological reasons and there's medication they can use, and they have to be monitored if they're going to be released. Monitored where they live, monitored if they're ever around children or forbidding them for. So there's things you can take, but to hate the person forever, it just holds you hostage. I don't know if that's helpful, Barbara.
Yes, it is. I think I understand more forgiveness than acceptance. But you just tell me, for me, acceptance has a limit for when the people are dangerous.
Sure. But think about, I guess on one level, think about how deeply obscured they are from Buddha nature. So much more than any of you that I'm looking at right now, I would imagine. I don't know all of you, right? But think about the level of their obscuration and think about the tremendous suffering they're causing for themselves due to the harm. So let's say you're out of control and you do harm. You have no understanding. You have these imprints, all this stuff. And then as a result of that, it causes you to do extreme harm. So you suffer again and again and again, tremendously, perpetuating that cycle. It's like a wild animal, lions that have to kill to eat. Now, granted, they kill to eat. It's their survival. They also kill to feed their partners and their children and their offspring. But it takes them a long time to get out of that cycle, according to Tibetan Buddhism, because of the killing karma. So you're no better than an animal, I think, when you're abusing a child, when you're invading somebody else's country or dictating all these people to go to war because of your limited, unhealthy parts of your ego. So much suffering you're causing yourself, let alone the people you're inflicting. So on that level, I have to accept the grave limitations of that consciousness. Rather than just holding Putin up as like, he's evil, 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 horrible, horrible. And then I keep, it just disturbs my mind. So why not have compassion for him, because he's causing himself so much suffering. And I can a little bit learn to accept, because it's coming from utter confusion. And haven't you been utterly confused sometimes? Haven't we all? I mean, we're not going to make a war. We're not going to abuse someone, but I'm meaning you're working on something with people, you're in a conversation with family, and you have a different memory of what happened. Or you might have a different idea. I've done it with Dharma centers. I'm the director of the center, you'd say. I'm not the director of this center, fortunately, but then and I had an idea, we have to do this, right? We have to have this is one center I years ago, running a center. I wanted to have all these activities all the time. And the staff kept saying, well, it's too much. We don't have enough staff. It's too much. No. So I just drove it for a month or two. They were completely wiped out, the staff, completely exhausted, unable to do much of anything. So I learned. But again, it was my confusion. That's a lighter level confusion. But they tried to tell me, they tried to say, and I just couldn't see it. So then I understand terrorists, other people, just have a deeper level of that confusion. That's just how karma works. It doesn't mean I think what they're doing is okay, but I can kind of just accept that state of mind in my own heart. Releases you from a bit of the tension. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think I used the word understand, but I understand what you mean with acceptance, and it's a level up. But yes.
And I will say it's hard. It's hard to do it. This is not easy, especially on the planet today. There's some horrible, horrible things that go on the planet. I can't believe what people do. You know, I mean, think about, I don't know if you know this story. In the States, there's some mothers like this. I don't know, in France, maybe. Some women suffer, as you know, postpartum depression, it's called. After they have a baby, their hormones are going up and down. Some people have terrible, terrible depression. So one woman in this space, she tried to get help, actually. She was very depressed. Her husband was very busy. They had 5 kids. She killed her 5 children. He was at work one day. She killed her 5 children. He came home and found the kids dead. She was alive, but can you imagine? I mean, I can't even, when I think about it, it's just because I'm also thinking about what she has to live with. She's in prison now. How do you live with that? Okay, now, really, I could say mental illness in a sense. I'm not saying it excuses her, but mentally ill, not balanced, not seeing clearly at all. Think about how we don't see clearly, even in our health. We don't see things as clear. You disagree with somebody, and a lot of times our stories are wrong, right? We disagree, but think about that extreme of what her mind must have been like to kill her children, right? What imprints must have been in that consciousness that was the choice she made, and how sad, how devastating. And so again, we need to have more of that understanding, especially on our path of Tibetan Buddhism, to hold these people in our heart, because there's so much suffering. But it's hard. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, no problem. So now we come to this lovely pillar, gratitude. Gratitude. We had a brief reflection this morning. This is how I wake up every morning, seriously, with the gratitude. The moments, the waking moments, the first minute, I just inhale that all the good circumstances in my life. Sometimes you wake up in a bad mood, right? Please have some gratitude. It's the thing that dismantles the bad mood, dismantles our complaining, whining, right? We have so much privilege in our cultures, so much privilege, so much advantages. Do we ever fully appreciate it? Do we ever fully appreciate it? Take the time. I just have a minute, morning, breathing in. I try to focus on it during the day. The second minute is gratitude for my personal good qualities. Okay, I'm not an egomaniac. I'm just in a balanced way reflecting on some of the things that I do well. And the reason is a lot of people have low self-esteem. So they don't think they do anything well. They don't think they have any good qualities. It's simply not true. It's a story you need to let go of. You have many, many good qualities. You may have taken someone to dinner. You may have bought somebody flowers once, bought them a gift. You may be a good daughter, a good son, good partner. You're good at what you do at work. You care about people to some degree. Many qualities you have. Okay. So I just give myself that 2 minutes. Then I reflect on death and impermanence, because the situation's quickly going. I know that. And it kind of wakes me up for the day. I better use the day wisely. Enough wasting time. Let's get to it. Set a good motivation from there. And then I get up. Then I get out of bed. Okay. Gratitude is the elevation of enjoyment. The elevation, it kind of brings all your enjoyment up a bit. It's a recognition of all that holds us in the web of life and all that has made it possible to have that life, the life we have now. Okay, this moment we're experiencing, Now I know sometimes there's unfortunate experiences. Again, there's always a silver lining. There's always a positive reframing you can do. reframing. Amazing. I mean, even in some of the worst situations, believe it or not. Okay. Every moment is a gift, can be seen as a gift. The gift within every gift is the opportunity it offers us. Most often it's the opportunity to enjoy it, but sometimes a difficult gift is given to us, a difficult experience. That can also be an opportunity to rise to the challenge. I do remember years ago, I did hospice work in San Francisco during the peak of the AIDS epidemic. It was incredibly tragic how people were dying. First, they would live 6 months only in the very beginning. And then with some medication and treatment, as they learned, they were living no more than 2 years, basically. Now it's just a chronic illness like diabetes. You know, now they have medication, and I know people living incredibly well with HIV, like that. So we would be, a couple of the hospitals in San Francisco had AIDS wards. So these were like a whole wing of the hospital had all these AIDS patients dying, horrible deaths. And one man, they wanted me, I was there with the client. I had a man I was with for 2 years, like I was an emotional support counselor, and was with Rick. And then, so you got to know the people in the wards, you got to know the nursing staff, and you'd see other patients that you knew and their partners and friends. And so somebody said to me, you gotta come see this guy. You gotta come see this guy. He's nearly dead. But so I didn't. So anyway, I went to this man's room who was blind from AIDS. I mean, just horrible. His body was finishing, and the nursing staff was concerned because he should have passed, and it was just so much suffering. And his room, when I walked in, it was, I have to say, the thing that reminded me later was when Lama Zopa Rinpoche's mother passed away in India in 90 to 91, over New Year, she passed away. His Holiness was teaching. She got to see His Holiness that morning with her children. And she passed away in a corner of a very basic room where all the Kopan monks and nuns were living for this week-long teaching in Sarnath, India. So it was a poor part of India. There weren't many good conditions. It was a little bit hot, right? Her body didn't decay for like 2.5 days, the consciousness there. And you could go in the room and sit and make an offering and sit there. And because I knew the family from Laudo, I would come in and sit, and the room was honestly alive with positive energy. Like it wasn't going into a morgue or anything. And her body was in a corner of the room. You could see her little face, peaceful, looking out, lots of offering scarves heaped over the body, katas heaped over the body. And the room had so much energy, positive energy of, she was still in this, what they said, this meditative space. When I went into this man's room in the hospital, it was like that, like this, like electric, positive, and I'm like, what is happening? This guy is dying. What is? So I went in the room, there weren't chairs, and there were some couple people there, and they said, it's Amy. Amy's coming in to talk with you. And he was radiant, beaming, a big smile on his face. He couldn't see. And the only place to kind of sit was like the edge of his bed. So I said, do you mind if could I sit down? He said, oh, please. He took, and we held hands, and his body was just ravaged. He was like a skin, and so I wasn't really sure what to do or say, but somehow they wanted me to see him. And then I just asked him, I said, you just look so radiant. Could you tell me a little bit about what you're experiencing right now? And then he thought for a moment, and he said, if I never would have gotten this disease, I never would have learned how to love. Just, who would think? I mean, that's where he was at the moment with, where other people you see dying in terror, hanging on, blaming, anger, resentment. This man was just unconditional love, just had somehow transcended. Fantastic, amazing. So that's where we can get to with gratitude. That's what can be helpful. But that's why I practice it every day, because I want it automatic in my mind. I want, when an unfortunate circumstances arises for me, I want to more quickly be able to get to that positive reframing and be like, oh, but I have all these other things. Like, oh, this unfortunate thing happened. However, I have food, clothing, and shelter. That's amazing. Like, I'm still okay. I can still walk. I can breathe on my own. I can still think clearly. So much to be grateful for. We are the privileged ones, right? And here, this is from the Benedictine monk and scholar, David Standel Rast. When you are grateful, you are not fearful. And when you're not fearful, you're not violent. When you're grateful, you act out of a sense of enough and not out of a sense of scarcity. And you're willing to share. If you're grateful, you're enjoying the differences between people and respectful to all people. A grateful world is a world of joyful people. Gratitude is a tremendous antidote to fear and anxiety. Tremendous antidote to fear and anxiety. And I would encourage, if you can, watch maybe some of the videos with Brené Brown, Brene. She may have some books translated into French. I have a feeling she does. If you can understand English, they're quite powerful about our relationship to gratitude, what happens when fear and anxiety arises, and things like that. I found it really, really helpful. And let me just bring up, she has these guideposts for wholesome living that I really, really like. I just wanted to read a few of these to you that contribute to joy very much. 10 guideposts, she says, for wholehearted living. Wholehearted living. Just see what you relate to here, okay? Cultivating authenticity. Can you cultivate authenticity and let go of what people think? Can you cultivate self-compassion and let go of perfectionism? Is perfectionism interfering with your joy? Everything has to be just so. Okay? Because I find with self-compassion, you kind of let go more, let go. Cultivating a resilient spirit. Can you let go of numbing and powerlessness? Okay, so what I noticed, some of you may have noticed this, during the pandemic, when I mentioned the people that adapted well, did a great job and were quite happy, quite enjoyed, you know, the people of the privileged classes that could adapt, and other people as well, right? Resilience is that spirit. They were resilient. You know, this is some unfortunate thing comes down on you. Here's another room I'm going to walk into. I got another door to open, another window to look out of, and figure out how I'm going to do this. Okay. So what happens is the numbing and powerlessness. Numbing, many people I know binge watching on Netflix. Like immediately, can't work, can't do this. I don't want to deal with it. I don't know what's going to happen. And then that makes you lazier. You're in front of the screen over, and it's easy to just, you know, now what Netflix does is it sucks you in, because the next episode is, it's okay, 15 seconds and the next episode starts. So you're just sucked right in there. Be strong. You know, sometimes I'll watch a movie. You know, I don't watch a lot of TV types of things, but occasionally someone will say, you got to watch this series, is really good. It's just a few episodes. Like, I don't want to get into a long year after year thing. I'm not interested. But some of them, they'll say, this is one, it's only 5 episodes. So I'll watch, but I'll notice how the next one's going to come on, and then I just cut it off. I go, 1 hour, that's enough. You know, I'll watch the next one next week. Like, just to limit, because otherwise that becomes the habit, numbs you out. I call TV the great numbifier. I don't know how you say it in French, but we have that kind of expression in English. Powerlessness, then you feel no power. Okay, so think about your resilient spirit. Can all develop that, or some of you have that. Here's another one. Can you cultivate gratitude and joy? Here's joy again, and here comes gratitude. Can you cultivate gratitude and joy and let go of scarcity Let go of, I don't have enough. I never have enough, right? There's abundance on the planet. This is something I noticed for those of you, it depends on your work, or certainly with the center, if you have financial issues with the center, I've done this a lot. The centers I ran, the centers, most of the centers I've been involved with don't have a lot of money. It's a common theme, right? We depend on donations. You know, Western nuns depend on donations. We don't have, FPMT doesn't support us, right? You can apply to our Sangha fund for support, and you can get a maximum of $300 a month. So it's not exactly enough to live on in the United States if you're living on your own and with other expenses. So we don't have an umbrella like the Catholic Church where they just, here's your nunnery, you live there till you die, and we're pretty much on our own. So, and it's a struggle for some people, but I don't have that mindset that I'm needy, I don't have, and so when I was raising money for our centers, which I'm doing now as well, when you're raising money for the centers, I honored money. You know, just because wealthy people have money, if you view that as negative, but I don't, because money can do enormous good on the earth. I've seen what it can do for centers. So I had to kind of honor and feel the abundance. And when you come to the centers I was running, you just come in, we were always feeding people. We always had enough food. Please join us. Please come to this. If you couldn't pay for a course or make an offering, come anyway, it doesn't matter. Absolutely, like just to live with that abundant heart is so helpful, and it really contributes to gratitude and joy, and that's where the gratitude and joy comes from. Here's another one. You're cultivating intuition and trusting faith, and let go of the need for certainty. Let go of the need, everything you have to know exactly what's going to happen. People say, when is the pandemic ending? Do you think it'll end this year? You know, what will happen? You have this election happening. You may want to know right now. I realized that my timing was off. I thought this was going late into your night, but it doesn't. It ends at, I think, is it 6 o'clock? Your time tonight, I think. So again, you have an uncertainty what will happen. What if I let it, there's many things we can't know. Many things we can't know. So if I trust somehow my path, it deepens my faith. If I trust, for instance, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, where I've consulted with him over years, but I began by asking one simple question. People said, don't ask a teacher a question for advice about your life or something or your practice unless you're willing to follow the advice. Don't ask them, you don't like the advice, then you go on to somebody else. That creates obstacles in your spiritual path. So I had met with Rinpoche. I wasn't a Buddhist, but I asked one question I was willing to follow. I got the advice from him, followed the instructions, and then I checked the result at the end, right? That it was incredible what happened to me of following the advice, incredibly wonderful. So that deepened some faith in him. Then I asked a year later, got a chance, I asked another question that I could follow. Again, I liked the result, liked the result, liked the result. So now I have deeper faith. So I could say, oh, you know, the center, the work's really hard right now. But I asked Rinpoche advice, and this is the advice he gave me, that this was best, not good, best. So I have faith in that. So I'm going to hang with it. I'm going to stick it out a little longer until something changes. So the intuition and trusting the faith and letting go that I need to know in a year where the center's going to be now. I can't know that. I don't need to insist on that. It's okay. We're moving along. Can you cultivate creativity in your life? Cultivate creativity and let go of comparison and competitiveness. Is that holding you down from your joy? Just work on your own mind and your creativity and what you want to do and be, instead of looking at other people. She has that, how do they have that? He has that. Live your own life. Make your own story. This is important, okay? This next one. Can you cultivate play and rest? This is the one I really need to embrace. And let go of, are you ready for this? Exhaustion as a status symbol. Okay, exhaustion as a status symbol, and productivity as self-worth. That's the United States of America, right? There's some people I know, their mantra is I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I mean, how do you wake up and you're just exhausted all the time? I understand people don't sleep well. That's different. But I mean, just your whole demeanor is I'm exhausted. So unfortunate, right? I mean, at least if you really are exhausted all the time like that, go to a doctor and find out what's wrong, right? But just to have the mental exhaustion, I'm always exhausted. And people have this productivity. People, what are you doing? People always say, what are you doing now? Well, how about how am I being right now? How am I being? Well, I feel pretty peaceful. Did some meditation this morning, went pretty well. Reading this book right now. That's what I'm doing, or instead of like, I have to have my list of, and I am doing a lot right now with the board, but the list of I did this, and now I have this going on. I'm fundraising for the center. I'm teaching for the center. I'm running the board. No, I'm not. I don't need to shower that down on people. Who cares? That's not kind of my badge. See how good I am because I do all these things? No, I'm taking some time off, meeting some friends. I hung out with my family last night. My niece is coming over tonight. We're going to have a meal, relax, share some, have some fun. Very important. Very important. Here's another one that kind of goes along is, can you cultivate calm and stillness? It also relates to your meditation practice, but can you cultivate calm and stillness and let go of anxiety as a lifestyle? Let go of anxiety as a lifestyle. Some of us know, we call them in the States, drama kings and queens. People where their life is one running emergency. And there's nothing, emergent about it that has to be an emergency. But it's always, oh my God, we have to do this now. How can you live like that? That's exhausting. But they need that edge of anxiety to kind of feel alive. There's certainly an edge that propels us that can be healthy, but when is it too much? When is it too much? Okay. And here's another one, cultivating meaningful work. And this is about what I mentioned about finding meaning in life. Find it now. What is the juice inside of you that lights you up from the inside? When you are in sync. For me, again, mostly it's about doing something that benefits others. Something that benefits others. Can I cultivate meaningful work, okay, meaningful lifestyle, and let go of self-doubt? And we have this in English, the word supposed to, like I should do something. Let that go. Let that go. And just if you're cultivating the meaningful work, you're right where you need to be. You don't need to keep doubting yourself and questioning. If the work has meaning, fantastic. Here's the last one of these guideposts for wholehearted living. And it's nice, wholehearted. Think of whole heart. Like Lama Yeshe used to talk about when you are living your life, are you touching reality? Lama was all about lessening the drama, and look at Westerners. When the Tibetan culture came in contact with Western culture, we're very, very different cultures. And I'm amazed by my Tibetan sisters and brothers. Now, granted, some of them I know were raised in incredibly poor situations. 5 people living in one little shack with a dirt floor, a little fire in the corner, outhouse outside in the freezing cold. I've met some of these monks and nuns. So for them, they're used to that kind of tolerating those situations. Westerners have it very comfortable, how a lot of us were raised. Very, very comfortable. So we're not really willing to kind of give that up, the comfort, So just weighing ourselves against and seeing how the cultures come together. And then the Tibetans escaped their country, the ones that could flee, many of our teachers, which was a horrendous journey. Okay. So you think of all the comfort we've had and what they have, and they rarely complain. I mean, now you get the younger monks raised at Kopan, raised there, and there's a little bit more attitude. But generally, some of my older friends, never. So it's something to think about as far as, but the complaining mind and what we're not happy with. That's where gratitude, I find, is so helpful, to just appreciate so much that we have, because our Western minds get so much anxiety of holding on to what we have. We're afraid we're going to lose this level of comfort. And in America, it's really hard. The first little comfort comes up, one little thorn, whatever, and people are just a mess. They can't deal with it at all. So you don't want to be a mess for other people. Take care of your mind, take care of your life skillfully, understand there is discomfort. And this way, I'm not making such a drama on others. So Lama used to talk about, are you touching reality? Like, you get into a relationship with all these unrealistic notions about it. And then later you're miserable. They break up with you and you're miserable. And it's a huge tragedy. Were you touching reality in the beginning? Realizing I'd like to have a relationship, nothing wrong with that. I met this person, we seem compatible. Did you take your time to find that you're compatible? That there's a friendship there, perhaps? Get together, can we support each other? Don't just think about what you want and your needs and your holes being filled. What can you help them with as well? But in a balanced way. It's mutual. Okay? But you go along for a while. Maybe it'll last, maybe not. But in the end, there's going to be death. Even if you have a wonderful long time together, that's reality. Then you go, okay, I think I'd still like to be with this person. Great. Let me see what I can contribute and what we can make together. Fantastic. That's not how we often get into relationship. Then we don't accept their flaws, their imperfections, right? Then there's miscommunication, big part of relationship problems. So look at everything in life. Are you touching reality? Again, go back. What's my perspective? Am I seeing the picture clearly? What's my story? Over and over, we have to keep asking that. So I love this idea of wholehearted, the heart open as much as possible. That kind of living we want to do. And it takes time to get it open. You have to open it in passages that you feel you can deal with, that you're comfortable with, that you have the wisdom and compassion to manage that. So I've been around His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, a few times. One time I had a meeting alone for half an hour from a request Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave me to ask His Holiness. It was incredible, many years ago. And when you meet His Holiness, for me, it was like this. The several times I've met him, he's a simple monk. And you do have that feeling about him, but he's the king of kindness. And supposed to be Chenrezig, the Buddha of infinite compassion incarnate. So it's a lot. Not that I saw him as the Buddha of compassion, but it blew my mind, just to be in the space, because you get a feeling the feeling is his heart's just completely open. There's no walls. We have little protectors, when this person's not that safe. So I'm going to close them. I feel a little insecure now around these people. So I'm going to close up. I'm really tired right now. So I'm going to close up. And this works really hard, so I'm going to kind of shut down. And he, in the face of utter adversity, losing his country, having to stand by while 1.3 million or so of his country people have been killed. And this heart is wide open. Amazing. So that's what you want to cultivate, this wholehearted experience. So this is the last one, is cultivating laughter, song, and dance. What are we letting go of? Being cool, okay? And always being in control. If that resonates with you, any of her guideposts for wholehearted living, Brené Brown. Okay? And think about being in control. I don't know if there's any control freaks here. People that really like control and like to exert control over others and have a little bit of a problem when they lose control. Something to think about. Yes, Brené Brown. So that's how you spell it. It doesn't always have the accent on the second E but that's how it sounds in French. And there's her website. Thank you. Capucine. Very sweet. It's really helpful. So what I wanted to say about control is, what can you control? What can you realistically control? Anybody? Please unmute if you have, yeah, Roger? Roger, please, yeah.
Ce qu'on peut contrôler, ce sont nos représentations, nos pensées. Enfin, nos pensées d'une certaine façon, pas complètement.
Can you just translate that for a moment? It was about,
Dans le
I think
sens
I think I got most of it, but.
Yes, I didn't understand exactly what Roger wanted to say.
Situation, elle est ce qu'elle est. Elle est ni bien ni mal.
Situation is neither good nor bad.
Yeah. The situation itself is no good, no bad.
So you can control that.
Pour moi, c'est la seule chose. On ne peut pas contrôler c'est ce que disent très bien les penseurs stoïciens. Il y a des choses qu'on peut contrôler, puis d'autres choses qu'on ne peut pas contrôler. Et la position des gens, ce qu'ils sont, ça, on ne peut pas le contrôler. Par contre, on peut contrôler notre représentation de ce qu'ils sont.
So, yes, some philosophers say that we cannot control what other people think and some situations, but what we think ourselves, our perspective maybe, and this we can control a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's your mind. It's the only thing you can control. I'm sorry, it's just your mind. It's simple though, that you only have to take care of the mind. So, but again, that's not an easy passage. And it doesn't mean you don't help people along the way, but I can't control them. I can't control how they will respond. But you can only control your mind, and we can't really even control our mind, can we? So why are you trying to exert control over other people? People often with their kids, they try to control their kids to a degree. Well, you raise your kids with good values and things, but they're going to go off and have their own adventures. They have their own karma. You do the best you can. It's just your mind. Like Roger said, those thoughts, your experiences, your reactions and responses is what you can control. So we have to work to control that. Absolutely. That's our job. Okay, let's finish these pillars. The next is compassion. Compassion and generosity are the last two pillars of joy. Compassion is a core of Tibetan Buddhism. Core of Tibetan Buddhism. So we hear a lot about compassion. We hear a lot about compassion. Compassion truly is the wish to free others from suffering. The wish to free others from suffering. Okay. Love is wanting them to be happy, but compassion is wanting to free them from suffering. So and what's interesting is we're most joyful when we focus on others. Please check your mind when again a cloud comes across the horizon, as I mentioned before. You're not happy all of a sudden. The day is not going the way you want it. Please check what's going on. What's happening? We have little things that interfere, little problems, but we also have bigger problems. And can you check in the midst of it, what's my motivation right now? Can you ask yourself, what was I wanting or needing to do right now? What interfered with it? Is it just a self-serving thing is why I'm upset? Or now granted, sometimes we're thinking about our families, but then it becomes my family. So again, it's just another extension of your ego. Okay? So again, you try to solve in a realistic, compassionate way, right? But without making a huger drama, without attacking anybody verbally or mentally like that. When we have the courage to live with an open heart, we're able to feel our pain and the pain of others, okay? But we're also able to experience more joy due to that. For me to go into the man's room with the terrible AIDS was a little scary for me, right? But everybody was so like, you got to see this guy. He's exceptional. You got to. So because I've been with these AIDS patients, I don't have AIDS. I've had some illnesses in life, nothing that dramatic, fortunately. Okay. But after time being with them and hearing my client, Rick, the guy I was with for 2 years, of what his experience was and letting him talk about his experience, all the horrors of it, what was happening to his body, the fears in his mind, and hanging out there with him, not running out of the room. I don't want to talk about this, Rick. This is too painful. Letting him talk about it. That was my role in this volunteer organization. So again, be able to feel that pain, the pain of others, so then I could sit with this man in his room and just kind of be there. And I have to say, it was joyful when he told me that thing about love. Filled me with joy that this is where he was in the end of him for this life. So again, it takes some courage to hang out there with people in their suffering. Okay? Pity, what pity does is you're in the hole, the person's in the hole, it looks down on the person. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me know if you need anything. That's pity. Empathy and compassion get down there in the hole with them. I'm not experiencing what you're experiencing. Doesn't mean you have to go through what they're going through. Okay. But I'm going to hang out here with you in it. So slight differences I've noticed is when somebody loses a parent or a child or a loved one, and you're a friend, you're nearby, or you know them. This is kind of our response in this community is you certainly would say, I'm so sorry. Maybe you didn't lose your mother, so you don't know what it's like when you hear they lost, that their mother died, even if their mother was old. So you might send a message or I'm so sorry. And then people often will say, let me know if you need anything. Well, when somebody just lost somebody, unless you're incredibly close with them, they're not going to reach out and call you and say, by the way, can you bring me a bag of groceries? So you bring the bag of groceries anyway, bag of food to them. So I've had, people just in my community, my neighborhood, we're very close, other friends and things. And what I might do is, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for what you're going through. It must be awful. Must be awful. How about if I make some soup tonight? It's really, trust me, it's really easy for me to make. It's no big deal. You don't need to thank me. You don't need to do anything. You'll return the container later. Don't even think about it. I have plenty of containers. I'm going to leave it at your front door. I'll tell you, 5 o'clock, it'll be there. So this way for your family, you'll have it. Don't even worry about it. And you just do it. People can always use food when people come over to the house. You just do it. You don't need any thanks. It's not a big deal. And just let them know it's no trouble for you. I really want it. I'm really happy to do this. And sometimes you can check in. Would that be okay? I've said to people, and they're like, yes, please, thank you. That's fantastic. Okay. They don't want to ask for it, but they're really happy that it's there. That's where compassion and empathy get in there. This is from Thupten Jinpa. Sorry, not the venerable monk the wonderful monk who's interpreting. Thupten Jinpa is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's interpreter when His Holiness teaches in the West. He is a Geshe, PhD equivalent, and he's also a professor at McGill University in Canada. He's wonderful, and he wrote a book called A Fearless Heart about compassion. I highly recommend it. I'm pretty sure it's translated into French. A Fearless Heart. Beautiful book. And he says compassion is a sense of concern that arises when we are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to see the suffering relieved. Compassion is what connects the feeling of empathy to acts of kindness, generosity, and other expressions of altruistic tendencies. So again, just like I said, the compassion and empathy are connected, and then they allow us to do these other positive acts. Fantastic. From His Holiness the Dalai Lama, this is an exercise in compassion. If we see a person stuck under a rock, the goal is not to get under the rock and feel what they're feeling. It's to help remove the rock. That's compassion. So you don't exactly have to be experiencing exactly what they're experiencing, but you're willing to be there with them and to figure out, is there somewhat solution to the problem at times? Self-compassion is closely connected to self-acceptance, but even more than the acceptance of ourselves. It's actually having compassion for our human frailties, recognizing we're vulnerable and limited like all people. As a result, it's the fundamental basis for developing compassion for others, this self-compassion, okay? It's hard to love others if you don't love yourself. So let me just, in the time we have left, because we're soon finishing, I think we understand a lot about compassion, huge source from joy to really, and not be kind of lying to yourself like, oh, I'm really compassionate. I helped him yesterday, the person who just lost their family, or, you're not kind of taking in a refugee family so you can tell everybody how great you are. That's not compassion. It's to help relieve their suffering. My sister she volunteers with an Afghan family in London. And it's great. It's like, she's got her household life. She shows the mother where to shop, where to get the best discounts for shopping, where to buy certain clothes, what kind of schools for the kids, because her kids went through those schools. She has all the resources. So this person doesn't have to do all this work in a foreign country. And then she offers friendships. So sometimes she has the family over to her house. She's been over to their place. They're, slowly they're getting on their feet. She has extra household items she doesn't need. She gives to the family that's perfect for them. They're good quality, things like that. We come now to the 8th pillar, generosity. Generosity. And from Rumi, the poet, are you jealous of the ocean's generosity? Why would you refuse to give this joy to anyone? Fish don't hold the sacred liquid in cups. They swim the huge fluid, freedom. Generosity in Buddhism is the first of the 6 perfections. It comes first in the 6 perfections because it creates the flow from which all Dharma practice can move through you and your life. Generosity. It's not just about giving money or giving things. It's a generous spirit that you have. And it's interesting, it's the 8th pillar here, but when you go back, it all kind of mounts from generosity in a sense. And it says here also from the book, in the end, generosity is the best way of becoming more and more joyful. Charity comes through every religion. Charity is the 5 pillars of Islam, zakat, it's called. Judaism, tzedakah, which means justice. Hinduism and Buddhism, dana, we call it. Christianity, charity. So there's obviously a benefit, not just in supporting the work we do, but think about your heart when you really give freely, when you give freely. Right? Think about giving your time. And in Buddhism, we give material giving. We talk about 3 kinds of generosity. Material giving, right? Giving freedom from fear, giving protection to people. Huge space of generosity you can give, right? Spiritual giving, teaching the Dharma, teaching people how to get out of suffering, how to change their minds. Huge things you can give. Being generous of spirit. Archbishop Desmond Tutu says it's becoming an oasis of peace, a pool of serenity that ripples out to all of those around us. There is, at some point, I'm just going to put this link in for you to watch. We don't have the time to watch right now, but this is a Thai life insurance ad, if you can imagine, from Thailand. Thai life insurance ad. I'm going to put it in the chat. You can copy the link. Have a watch. It's about generosity. And it's very sweet, like for a life insurance company. Now, granted, it's Thailand, which is a Buddhist country. Okay, it's worthwhile. Copy it and just watch it. It's not that long, but it's very, very sweet about generosity. Generosity is based in perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, and compassion. taking care of others, helping others, ultimately is the way to discover your own joy and to have a happy life. Absolutely. Just one last thing, and I just want to show one last video in closing. There's a lot more we could go on with, clearly. Generosity is also something we learn by doing, like any familiarity, we learn it by doing. There's some people I know, and I notice this with children, when they're not very, some kids are just not that generous to start with, and others are enormously generous, right? So it's like teaching, and I've noticed the parents working with the child, showing them that they make donations to charitable groups, that they offer their time to volunteer for certain things. You know, bringing, there's some people I know in Florida, they asked me once because they volunteered with their children at a large animal shelter in the Miami area. And they asked one time when I was coming, could you come with us to do blessings for the animals? This is the largest animal shelter, I think, in the States. It's in Miami. And we went around to like 400 different cages of animals. I played mantras of Lama Zopa Rinpoche for the animals while we went around, and they donated money and they brought animal beds and food and collars and all kinds of things, blankets. And so the parents taught the children, because they said to the children, we want to help somebody, people less fortunate than us or something. What would you like to do? And the kids had interest, and the parents had interest. It's a way to teach your children. It's a way to teach others. When people see, and I notice if I'm with friends, we're walking down a city street, there's a homeless person, and I kind of, different people I'm with, some of them won't look at the person, notice, I get out money to put, and then I notice one of them would be like, oh, I'm going to give too. But if we had just walked by, we all would have walked back. So it's contagious like that. So when we practice a generosity of spirit, we're in many ways practicing all of these other pillars of joy, because in generosity, there's a wider perspective, which we see our connection to all others, okay? There's a humility that recognizes our place in the world and acknowledges that at another time we could be the one in need, okay? There's a sense of humor and an ability to laugh at ourselves. Whoops. To laugh at ourselves so that we don't take ourselves too seriously on the path, okay? There's an acceptance of life in which we don't force life to be other than what it is. I'm not wishing to look at everything I could have rather than seeing what I have in front of me. There's a forgiveness of others and a release of what might otherwise have been. There's a gratitude for all that's been given. And finally, we see others with deep compassion and a desire to help those who are in need. And from this comes a generosity that is wisely selfish, as His Holiness says, a generosity that recognizes helping others as helping ourselves. And as His Holiness says, in fact, taking care of others, helping others ultimately is the best way to discover your own joy and to have a happy life. So I just want to show this one last little video of Archbishop Desmond Tutu teaching His Holiness how to dance. hope you enjoyed that. Are there any questions, please, before we close? Any comments?
Hi, Venerable. I just wanted to thank you so much for this teaching. Thank you so much. It was a very good timing for me personally to receive it. And looking forward of you giving more teachings. And thank you for being so approachable and sharing your personal experience, actual personal experience that really makes it very reliable. And
thank you, Tsanka. I missed you, and it's so good to see you.
Same. I hope you come visit very soon. Anyway, you will get a more official and appropriate invitation than this.
I'm supposed to be teaching for Institute Vajrayogini the first weekend in May.
Yes, 7th and 8th.
They wanted me to come in person, and because of the time change, because I'll be back in California then, so I hope they'll let me do it on Zoom, and I'll just get up early this time, and then hopefully next year I could be in person.
Yes. I think anytime you are very welcome. Zoom or in person, even better. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I hope this has been useful for everyone. I would like to dedicate the merit for all of us to take this fantastic energy we've created just to talk about joy. I hope it's been useful for you to build more joy into your life. There's a lot more we could have gone into, and hope it's been helpful. So I'd like to dedicate this energy, the merit, to, again, all of our sisters and brothers in Ukraine, for that conflictive war to be ended immediately with the best outcome for the most beings. And for somehow the leaders of the totalitarian regimes to have their minds merge with Bodhichitta instantly, for your outcome for the election in France to be whatever's most beneficial for most beings. I hope that comes out. I'd like to dedicate to, for COVID and all pandemics to be eradicated from the planet immediately. And for those who need additional healing, mental and physical, to receive it as soon as possible. And for the long lives of our precious teachers. Do you have the long life prayers for His Holiness and in French? And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, perhaps?
I could retrieve it, but I might need 1 or 2 minutes.
If it's easy, if not, we can just dedicate.
Let me
what
check.
I do is I have it in English. Let me show it in English, and then what we can do is Venerable Jimpa can translate if it's okay. I'll share my screen. And let's just do this first one here. We can actually do in Tibetan phonetics. Janju Senjo Rinpoche, Ma ke panam ge gyochik, ke panyam pa me pa yi, gone gondu pelwar shog. So just reflect on that, what it says in May the precious Supreme Bodhichitta, not yet born arise, may that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. And this next one, however many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses without exception of transmigratory beings never occur again. For the long lives of our precious teachers, for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. For Lama Zopa Rinpoche's long life, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. I'd like to thank Arnaud and Capucine and Venerable Jimpa for the Centre Kala Chakra for hosting me. I'm so grateful to all of you for showing up and spending your time this weekend. It's been really lovely because I can't be there in person. I hope it's soon, but it's been lovely seeing all of you. Thank you so much.
Venerable.
Merci
And
beaucoup.
thank you, and please teach again soon, and hopefully in person in France next year. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please be well. Good luck today. We say in the States, may the force be with you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.